Welcome to the Fisheries Museum of the Atlantic, located in the pretty little UNESCO town of Lunenburg. But more specifically, welcome to the Bluenose Gallery. And this year, we have a refresh of the Bluenose Gallery in honor of its 100th birthday. And we're calling it Celebrating 100 Years of the Queen of the North Atlantic. And we're going to start our little tour of this gallery in the very thing that made this vessel famous. And that is the story about racing. Racing was the key that made this vessel an iconic legend of Canada. And why was this so important? Well, for a variety of reasons. The number one being, here in Lunenburg, our seafaring peoples, we wanted the world to see that not only were our fishers very good at fishing, but they were also extremely skilled sailors. And who better to showcase that than the fishermen of Lunenburg in the Fishermen's International Schooner Races. And how was that done? That was done by Bluenose. Bluenose is the queen of the North Atlantic. She is undefeated in the Fishermen's International Schooner Races. And how do we start that career? Well, this particular image here is going to start that off for us in the best of ways. This is Bluenose in her very first race in 1921, and we can see she's rounding the buoy, and she is in the lead. And that's the position that she will maintain for the rest of her racing career, is being in the lead. Also within this particular exhibit, we will have the model. This particular model was made by George Myra of Bluenose. He was a former crew member of Bluenose. We have half models of the other vessels that had competed in this series. That would be the Elsie, the Henry Ford, as well as the Gertrude L. Thibault. And then directly behind us, we have a model of the Columbia, which many see as the greatest rival of Bluenose. Next, we're going to move on to, though, how did this story actually start? So Bluenose, famous for racing, but where does that story really begin? It's going to begin with the actions laid out by a few really key players. And one of those key players is William Ruy. William Ruy is the designer of Bluenose. He's a naval architect, and certainly he's done over 100 designs, but none of them being more famous than that of Bluenose. So famous that it is what led him into the Canadian Hall of Fame, is his work done with the design of Bluenose. It's also the design of Bluenose that gave him enough success that he could leave the family's soda-making business and solely focus on his true passion of designing sailing vessels. Another key player that we absolutely cannot forget, of course, is Captain Angus Walters. Now, Captain Angus Walters, his story starts like so many fishermen of Lunenburg. His dad went out to sea. He started his career going out on his dad's boat, but that did not afford him any favors. He started off as a throater. That led to being a header. Eventually, he was a dory mate, and then he became a mate, and then he became a skipper. It's a very typical story of many Lunenburg seafaring fishermen. But where does he really step into that picture of being a Canadian icon himself? Well, again, that's going to be with Bluenose. Now, a little bit before Bluenose came to be, Captain Angus Walters competed in the very first race of the Fishermen's International Schooner Series. That was in 1920. And unfortunately, due to a mishap where the topmast broke, and that cost him too much time that he could not recover, he lost that race. And it was the losing of that race that he and others really gave birth to the idea we need to build ourselves a vessel to make sure that this does not happen again. Because as Angus said, the reason he lost that race, he was in too small of a boat. He needed something bigger, something to bring the trophy home to Nova Scotians. So how does that all start? Well, now we're going to talk about another key player, and that is Senator W.H. Dennis. He was keenly involved in this and very much knew that we had to have a way to showcase the true skill behind the Nova Scotian fishermen and their abilities to sail. The world needed to see that these fishermen really housed the necessary skills to navigate the seas and to handle that ship to cross that finish line first. So Senator Dennis came up with the Bluenose Schooner Company Limited. And this company would make sure that we put all of that paperwork into place. How are we going to raise the funds? We're going to sell shares. And we're going to have Captain Angus Walters be the captain of this new vessel being designed by none other than William Ruy. So we got one other key player, or players, shall we say, that's missing from this beginning story. And that is naturally those men at the shipyard, the Smith and Ruland shipyard. And that's where all of their hard work comes into fruition. And we see the beginnings of what this icon's going to look like. So the Smith and Ruland shipyard had made a promise that they could build this vessel in 100 days. But they did better than that. They built her in 97 days. From start to finish, she was ready to grace the waters. So that means we have to have that famous launching day. So it's a cold Saturday morning, March 26, 1921, and we're going to launch this vessel into the waters. Now, of all the Bluenose stories that I have read, I have to say, this is my personal favorite one. So think about 1921, and the average household does not own a vehicle. But yet we know we have over 3,000 people that have gathered to watch this vessel be launched. Now you may think, well, that's not a really large crowd, but that's more than the population of Lunenburg. And she's not done anything yet. She's not famous yet. But we have 3,000 people who've taken time out of their day to make this hike to get to this shipyard to watch this vessel be launched. We have people that have traveled as far as Toronto to watch this vessel be launched. We call it the end of the beginning. She is complete, and the crowd is there, and they're holding their breath to see what's going to happen. And so with the orders of knock down and wedge up, she slides off the ways into the harbor and pointing out towards the sea, which is considered a good omen. So we have the cheer of the crowd, and we all wait to see what is going to happen. But I guess that nobody really knew that they were standing there watching the birth of what was going to become truly a Canadian icon. But icon work was not the first order of the day. In order to compete in the Fishermen's International Schooner races, you had to be a working fishing vessel. If you did not meet that criteria, you were not able to enter the race. So the first thing that Bluenose had to do was to fish. So she head out on her maiden voyage to the fishing banks off the coast of Newfoundland. And it was almost her last voyage. She was there, and it was a foggy, foggy night, and Captain Angus looks up, and he sees a large square rigging ship with its course set coming directly towards her. He had all the crew up on the deck, and they were ringing their bells and blowing the foghorns, but that tall ship did not alter from the course. They got so close that it got to the point that Angus had to get the men to get off the vessel, jump in the dories, unload. And Angus and another crew member rowed towards that large tall ship, screaming at the top of their lungs for them to move off course. It didn't happen, but fortunately missed her by mere inches so that she could finish out her fishing season. Now, fishing was the thing that she had to do, not only just to compete in the fishermen's schooner races, but she also had to fish because she had to earn her keep. And Bluenose was spared no graces, just like all the other fishing vessels were not spared. She too encountered many dangerous storms, specifically the storm off of Sable Island. These are storms that have shaped this community of Lunenburg, well known for the August gales of 1926 and 1927. And Bluenose too almost lost her fate off of Sable Island. And you will see in this particular part of our gallery, we have a bottle of sand that actually came from the deck of the Bluenose when she magically somehow got her keel off that sandbar and was able to sail away to safety. So another honor that was bestowed upon Bluenose was in 1933 when she was asked by the Government of Canada to represent our nation at the Chicago Century Exhibition. This was quite a thing for fishermen to be doing something like touring. Who ever heard of a fishing boat doing touring? So much so they actually had special uniforms made for them when they went on their touring career. This was seen by the fishermen as something totally out of their realm of comfort to have a sailor's uniform. But off they went, and really not quite certain as to how popular they would be, and not at all prepared for the thousands and thousands of people who stood in line to get aboard Bluenose. I mean, we knew that Nova Scotians were quite proud of what our fishing schooner had accomplished in her races, but really didn't have a sense that she was that famous, that she went beyond the eastern seaboards. Quite spectacular. She wintered the following year in 1933, 1934. She wintered in through the Great Lakes area and participated in the Canadian National Exhibition as a representative. And then came the biggest honor of all, which was when she was invited to England to attend Silver Jubilee of King George V. This was quite a thing. So now we can honestly say that her fame was really global. It had gone beyond Nova Scotia, past Canadian borders, all the ways over to England. Everybody wanted to see this legend. So times were changing. The days of having wooden sailing vessels heading out to the Grand Banks to catch fish was becoming a thing of the past. And therefore, all of the glory of the Bluenose days seemed to be fading. And a real mark to that change in time was in 1942 when Bluenose was sold to an American company to work as a freighter off the West Indies. This was a fate that was common to many fishing vessels to spend the latter part of their career working as a freighter off the West Indies. But it was a sad day to think this is where our icon would end up, working as a freighter. More than that, it is truly the end. In 1946, while working as a freighter, she hit a reef off the coast of Haiti, and there she lay. So Bluenose was gone, but she certainly was not forgotten. Not forgotten here in Lunenburg, nor in the hearts of Canadians. And we had this thing that was happening in Lunenburg. And it started in 1960 when we had the building of a replica, the HMS Bounty. And with that came an idea. Could we possibly rebuild Bluenose? And as those thoughts are swirling around, we have this large brewery company called Olin's. And they were thinking, I think we'd like to build ourselves a large schooner to promote our new product, schooner beer. And these two worlds collided together, and we had ourselves a plan. We are going to build the replica of Bluenose. We are going to have ourselves Bluenose 2. She was launched in July of 1963, an exact replica of the original Bluenose as far as the hull and the rigging was concerned. Now below decks, she's far more grand. The original intention of Bluenose 2 was that she would spend her summer months doing charters off of Halifax, and in the winter months that she'd go to the Caribbean and she'd do some public charters down there. So a little more fancy than that original fishing schooner below decks. Nevertheless, she had all of those beautiful lines that were designed by William Ruy were given birth again. And to make it really special on that launching day, we actually had William Ruy and Captain Angus Walters there to see the birth of Bluenose 2. Now, like I said, initially she was there and built by Olin's to promote schooner beer, and they did that for a while. But in 1971, she was given to the province of Nova Scotia. Now, she needed a little work after that, and we had a little fundraising campaign, and they did that work. And she ended up in 1974 going to Virginia. And we were very pleasantly surprised by, wow, what an attraction she was. And that's when it was discovered, you know, she's the sailing ambassador of Nova Scotia. And that's what Bluenose 2 is to us today. She's the sailing ambassador of Nova Scotia. So that wraps up the tour of our Bluenose Gallery, celebrating 100 years of the Queen of the North Atlantic. But before we leave, just a little highlight on what we absolutely here at the Fisheries Museum see as our prized artifact, and that is the trophy, the Fishermen's International Schooner Race Cup. This beautiful trophy that was given by W.H. Dennis, Senator, who worked with the Halifax Herald. He put forth this grand trophy. And other than that first race of 1920, she stayed here where she belonged in Nova Scotia, all thanks to Bluenose.